Hi, my name is Madison Thompson. This is my Phylum Project Archive for organism number 9, Nematoda, and this is for Biology 102, Section 4. Phylum Nematoda includes more than 28,000 species and 16,000 of which are parasitic. The specific organism in question for this is not parasitic. The tubular morphology and circular cross-section of this organism are unique to it, and it shows that it's constantly a cylinder. This can be found in other organisms, but it's particularly relevant because this phylum contains mainly ringworms and other parasites. They have a complete digestive system with a distinct mouth and anus, and they also have an exoskeleton that must be shed. They're bilaterally symmetrical, which kind of goes along with the tubular morphology, but it's still important to note because if they're cut in half, they're still symmetrical, even if their cross-section is still a circle. So they have a very definite form. And the image on the right explores this a little bit more. They have a dorsal nerve, which is also found in chordata, which humans are in. And excuse me, they have a mouth and anus, a complete digestive system, and the pharynx, which is also found in most humans. And yeah. So the specific organism of study is Caenorhabditis elegans, and the common name for this is C. elegans. The reason it doesn't have a more descriptive common name, like a stellar glass cell or anything like that, is because it's commonly used in the lab. So the common name is just shortened, C. elegans, and that's what it is. The taxonomic information can be seen on the right, and on the left, a little bit more description about the name. Caenorhabditis gets its name from the Greek and Latin roots caeno and rhabditis and elegans, and respectively it means it's a recent rod-like organism, and it's also elegant. The recent and rod-like is because it developed recently. It hasn't been around forever, and it's rod-like because of that circular morphology discussed previously. The elegance part, the elegant name, comes from its contributions to science being incredibly important. So it's an elegant organism for all that it's achieved. Here's some images of me with the organism in lab. Here you can see them without a microscope, just a close-up on the left, and they're little dots. You can't really tell what they are from that picture. Here's me with the little dots. And then under a microscope, you can tell that they are in fact C. elegans. You can see that their squirmy features are present. There's a distinct head and tail region, and they clump together. They don't have any definite structure. They're a worm-like structure, right? So they don't have specific bones and a skeletal system like humans, and that kind of helps to identify them. The mode of nutrition for Caenorhabditis elegans is chemoheterotrophy, meaning that they rely on the consumption of other organisms for their nutrients. As these are typically microscopic organisms, they consume primarily bacteria. They're also non-parasitic and do not contain diseases, which is significant because most organisms in the phylum Nematoda do. They use their nutrients acquired from consuming prey to undergo cellular respiration, and they receive carbon in the form of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And this organism, being a chemoheterotroph, means that it consumes other organisms to gain its nutrients and then undergoes chemical processes within its own body to convert these nutrients into a usable form. Their mode of reproduction is sexual. However, they can self-fertilize. They're often both male and female, and there's rarely just a male organism. And they're hermaphrodites. And hermaphrodites lay up to 1,000 eggs at a time. And this is, again, likely from self-fertilization or a rare interaction with a male. And these organisms go through 4 distinct life stages. Because they have an egg and a sperm that comes together, even if it's within oneself, these organisms undergo gametic meiosis, meaning that a gamete forms from the union of an egg and cell, both of which contain diploid genetic information, or haploid genetic information that comes together to form a diploid cell with unique genetic information. So there are 4 distinct life stages are seen here on the right, and it starts as an egg, then they're in the L1 stage. And depending on the conditions they face in the L1 stage, if conditions are normal and they have a decent amount of food, they'll progress into the L2 stage, and all of these stages are just growth. There is development, as you can see, organs begin to appear, but typically they're just increasing in size. And then if they don't progress into the L2 stage, it's due to crowding, starvation, or high temperature, and they'll go into the Dower stage, where they develop to be larger than an L2 organism, but still not large. And this means their oral cavity stays plugged. so they cannot eat or consume any food, and they'll stay in the survival stage for several weeks until resources are available, and they'll progress straight into the L4 stage, which is a stage that the normally progressing organisms have to go through the L3 stage to get to the L4 stage. And once they're in the L4 stage, they have most of their organs except for the sexually reproducing ones, which they acquire in adulthood and eventually die shortly after. But just something important to know about the dower stage is that it ends when resources are available, and organisms that go into the dower stage will live for 4 to 8 weeks, typically about 6 weeks, whereas organisms that progress straight into L1, L2, L3, L4, and then adult stage live for 2 weeks, maximum 3 weeks. So it prolongs their life if they go into the dower stage. This is a map of the source, range, and distribution of Caenorhabditis elegans as they are found naturally. These organisms are typically found throughout the world in a laboratory setting, so it's not fair to say, oh, they're found here and here. This is instead their locations where they can survive and do survive. This sample of C. elegans was found at North Carolina A&T State University on Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022. And that's here in this green area. So it was found synthetically because it's not quite covering North Carolina in the area that it was found. So this was in a laboratory setting. Caenorhabditis elegans is found in temperate soil environments worldwide. And these biomes are clumped in their distribution, typically north of the equator or further south of the equator, but not on the line. And because they're clumped in their distribution, so is the organism. These organisms are quick to proliferate. They have a very short lifespan and reproduce quickly. And so anywhere that they can exist and thrive, they will. This implies that they are widely distributed in every environment seen here, and therefore they would be clumped because there would be many of them. It's not one in Europe, one in North America. It's likely millions in each area. This organism feeds on bacteria, so bacteria must be present in its environment. And it does have an adaptation to survive if its resources aren't present, where it will go into the dower stage discussed previously and not eat or drink until it has the nutrients it needs available. However, it also will feed on bacteria when it is readily available, which makes it fairly important to the environment. The image on the right shows the ideal habitat of this organism, and the image on the far right shows a habitat where it could survive. It likes temperate soil environments and will likely be found in the soil or in porous areas, not on the surface. And it likes to be found in decaying vegetation because the organisms that are decaying this vegetation or the organisms that it preys on. It likes to be found in humid areas. It's a worm. It needs to be wet and moist to travel. And rotting fruits and compost are a particularly common location for this organism to be found. Bacteria must be present for it to feed, and if this organism was removed, bacteria would be more abundant. This could be a major issue for humans, as these organisms are often found in vegetable gardens, and if bacteria became abundant in vegetable gardens, we could easily get sick from the food we consume. It could also be harmful to other organisms if this organism was removed, because the proliferation of bacteria, specifically E. coli, would cover the earth in just days if left to proliferate with no control. So organisms that consume bacteria are incredibly important for the survival of humans and other organisms in the ecosystem. The primary ecological role of Caenorhabditis elegans is to consume bacteria and form decomposing matter in the process. They function as a decomposer because they return nutrients to the soil. They eat the bacteria that's on nutrients, and then in doing so, they decompose the bacteria and the organism the bacteria was on. They can also survive on yeast, and they sometimes form mutualistic relationships with certain fungi. And if this organism was removed, decomposition would be slowed. Note that they form a mutualistic relationship with fungi, which is a known decomposer, meaning that they're contributing to this process in some way. Here's my references, and thank you for watching.